Fiscal policy. Follow me carefully. Why? Examination will certainly have one or two questions on this. Because that is government finance. What is public finance? You know, public finance is government finance. Government has its receipts, government has its expenditure, and together it constitutes public finance, government finance. And what is the policy which is at the center, front and center of public finance? Fiscal policy. So what's fiscal policy? You know, fiscal policy is the policy of the government to raise financial resources and spend them for its priorities. Please understand one thing. When you say fiscal policy, the entire government finance is captured in that. The receipts and expenditure, tax policy. So in fiscal policy, you have receipts. After all, government has financial receipts and expenditure. All the receipts can be classified, all the expenditure can also be classified into revenue and capital. Revenue and capital. You know, after watching this Israeli violence, violence in the area, Hamas's violence, we lose understanding of who are we, who am I, what is my family, my brother, my sister, my mother, my father, my cousin, my nephew, my niece. Nothing. Nothing. We have no idea what's going on. Everything is, you know, it's absolute shocker. So, and the worst of it is why we don't have such a stable sort of feeling right now is, it's not even begun. I've heard someone say from Israel, the defense minister, ultra-right character, we will wipe out Gaza, we will wipe out Hamas and others for the next 50 years. I don't know how many people are going to die. You know, that is a deeply disturbing thing. So I have no idea who am I, who is others. Nothing. Revenue, come back here. This is, you know, after all we are in India. So all the finances of the government, you have to understand government receives, and what it receives, it spends. And whether it is receipt or expenditure, it is classifiable into two columns everywhere. Ask any chartered accountant, what are the two streams of the finance? Revenue, capital. Article 112 also says the president is responsible for getting the annual financial statement tabled, and in that there will be revenue and other accounts. Other means capital. Revenue, receipts. Revenue receipts. in this tax, non-tax. So the government gets money, tax, non-tax. In the revenue, so what's tax? Indirect, direct. Tax. There is only indirect tax, direct tax, and there is a cess on that. Cess. There may be a cess. Indirect is you don't directly pay to the government, you pay to a middleman. He pays to the government on your behalf. He has to. For example, you buy, a bottle of water. 1 rupee of GST on that. You pay to the guy who sold you the bottle. He in turn pays to the state government and the central government 50 paisa each. In other words, the indirect tax that you have paid, you paid to the government indirectly. Similarly, the GST, I've given you the example of GST. GST is an indirect tax which is paid by the consumer to the government of India, via, those who sell. Simple example, goods and services tax. Direct tax, you pay to the government directly. Income tax, 100 rupees, pay directly to the government. Corporate tax, profits of the company are called corporate tax, pay directly to the government. And you buy or sell shares, securities, transaction tax you have to pay to the government. Your broker will pick it up, or your broker will pass it on. Of course, it comes under income tax department. How exactly the mechanics of it is something else. So what you pay directly is direct tax, what you pay via somebody is indirect tax. And they together make up about this budget, if I'm right, about 33 lakh crores of rupees you collect. Of that you pass on something like 11 or 12 lakh crores to the states. You left with about 21, 22. We'll see the math later. Don't have to remember. Tax. This is tax. Non-tax. Revenue, please. What is revenue? Revenue is something which keeps repeating, recurrent. You pay GST, government gets GST every month. Government gets the income tax, corporate tax periodically, every 3 months, 4 months, whatever, every year. So, any source of financial receipt which is recurrent is revenue. When you come to the capital, you will be able to distinguish the two. So, for the time being, you understand revenue as repetitive, recurrent, that's it. Recurrent. Every year, every month, every quarter, every half year, it happens. So, it is revenue. Then non-tax revenues. Revenue again, but non-tax. See, you gave me 100 rupees. On that, I have to pay you 8 rupees of interest. That interest is revenue, that loan is capital. So, the interest, non-tax, interest, interest on the money that you've lent. And remember, Government of India has Ministry of Railways, and it's a commercial body. It makes money. So the profit that you make on your departmental enterprises, I want you to understand this very clearly. There is Ministry of Railways, which is the departmental undertaking. It's a ministry. The money goes into and comes from Consolidated Fund of India. It's a ministry. It's a commercial ministry. But the money goes into and comes out of CFI. There is NTPC, majority owner is the Government of India. And there is Coal India Limited, majority is Government of India. They have nothing to do with me. In the sense, they have their own accounts. They make their profits, their losses, their reserves, etc. I can't dip into them even 1 rupee. They have their own independent autonomous finances of receipts and expenditure, loans and shares and all that. So in a departmental undertaking, that being, departmental undertaking, link is with CFI. They have no relation to CFI. So, but I'm the majority owner of Coal India Limited, NTPC. So what happens is, I may lend them money. They'll give me interest, revenue. Another thing about them is, they make profit. So there is a CIL, Coal India Limited. It makes profit. And that profit, whichever company makes profit, what do you do with the profit? A little bit, keep it as a reserve. A little bit, reinvest. A little bit, give it to the shareholders. Because of you I am there, so a part of my profit I am sharing with you. You call it dividend. So the dividend is also non-tax. Why? It comes every year. Most likely it will come every year because you are likely to make profits every year. As long as you are making profits, it's most likely that you will give me dividend. Unless you say, I want to reinvest the whole thing. Happens very rarely. So, dividend. I hope you got the concept. Dividend is very simple. A portion of the profit of the company is distributed to all shareholders as dividend. That is dividend. Why? You are my shareholders. I need to keep you happy. You are invested with me. So it's my duty to ensure that you make profits. And when I'm making profits, you are making profits. So I'll share part of the profit in terms of financial benefit. So that is dividend. Now I'm sure your mind has gone to the RBI. So why RBI? I'll explain that to you. You must give me 5-10 minutes here. I need to explain that to you. So Government of India is there. RBI is there. I own the RBI. Government of India owns the RBI. In the RBI Act of 1934, it's been clearly said, when RBI makes profit, they call it surplus. They don't call it profit because, after all, it's a central bank. It's not a commercial bank. It's a central bank. We'll continue with the word profit. There's nothing wrong about it. When the central bank, that is the RBI, makes profit, RBI will keep some of the profit back and transfer rest of it to the Government of India as a dividend. After all, I'm the 100% owner of the RBI. So I own the RBI. So you pass on a lot of the profit to me as dividend. You keep something back. Then you will go into fundamentals and ask me, how does the RBI make profit? Very simple. RBI bought the dollar at 75, sold the dollar at 83, so RBI made 8 rupees there. RBI might have bought the dollar at 70, sold it at 83, 13 rupees of profit. But some of it has to keep back. Remember one thing. There is RBI. After all, RBI sells government securities to the banks and others. The rating that the RBI gets depends upon how secure it is, how well capitalized it is. So if RBI says, see, these are tens of thousands of crores of rupees with me, and I'm selling you the securities, have faith in me, then the demand for the government securities is higher. But if the RBI says, I have no money, all the dividend I've given, all the profit, I hardly have any money kept with me, then the trust of the market in the RBI also goes down and the interest rates go up. Central bank, yeah, anyone asking question? Okay. Central bank should keep, after all, you're giving employees, you have a lot of employees, you have rent to give, air conditioners and all that, number one. And anything can happen tomorrow. What can happen? Rupee can crash rupee can appreciate to 75, and you bought a lot of rupee at 82, and then today it is 75, in the extreme case. You made a loss of 7 rupees on every dollar that you bought. Does it look okay if you made losses? So keep a lot of money to withstand ups and downs, contingencies they are called, and rest that you think is surplus, hand it over to the government of India as dividend. So Bimal Jalan committee and all that, we don't have to go into that. So basically RBI gives the dividend. Yes. The dividend is also like NTPC or CIL. There is no difference there. So interest is one, dividend is another. The third one is profits. After all, you have your own companies. I gave you the example of Indian Railways, and that's a departmental undertaking. It makes profits, and all the profits are appropriated by the government. So these are the non-tax revenues. Profits come every year, every quarter. Dividend comes every year. Special dividends also may. Interest, interest is, the property of interest is it's there every month, whatever the contractual term, every month, every quarter, every half year, annual, whatever. This is the revenue receipt profile of the government of India. Revenue. I'll pause here for a second. I'm sure your mind is active. You want to ask something. Please go ahead. Don't hold yourself back. Go anarchist, wild, whatever strikes your mind, you ask.
So in the beginning when you were telling about the difference between public finance and fiscal policy, I couldn't quite catch it. If you could repeat that.
Very simple. What is public finance, government finance, and what's the policy that operates the government finance? Fiscal policy. Raise money, spend it. Tax, non-tax. This is the revenue side. This is the capital. Together, receipts. And here, expenditure begins. So you received 100 and you have to spend 100. Yes? So how do you receive the money? There is a fiscal policy that formulates the taxes, dividends, profits, interest, etc. That's fiscal. Tell the RBI, give me 70,000, 80,000 crores. In fact, one deputy governor wrote a book the other day, about 20-25 days back or 1 month back, Viralacharya, he said, we had a problem with the government. Government was asking about 2 lakh crores of rupees of dividend. They needed money for all the welfare schemes. We couldn't afford because we are bothered about the RBI, its stability, its credibility, its rating, and so on. Therefore, I had to resign, and I resigned. So what's the short point here? The fiscal policy is the policy related to mobilization and expenditure of financial resources. Yes?
Yes.
That is public finance. Fiscal policy is the operational phase of the public finance. Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. So, you got, I'll wait, only one question I got. Please ask, whatever you like, you please ask. practice a little bit of speaking in the class also, so that, you know, when the occasion demands in the interview, you speak, or you start formulating your answer for the main right here.
Sir, what is the difference between dividend and profit? Because both are saying that profit.
When profit is passed on to the shareholder, it becomes a dividend. I am the company, I make profit. You are my shareholders. The profit, when it's given to you for consumption, whatever you like to do with it, dividend. Profit is made by the company and it becomes dividend when it is passed on to the shareholders. Do what you like with that. Got it? Yeah. Take your time. Take your time. Yeah.
So where is the role of DCFI and the public accounts and contingency?
No, you must speak louder, clearer.
Sir, where is the role?
Role of what?
Sir, of consolidated fund of India and the.
We'll come to that. It's lined up for discussion. Right now is not the time, because I have to complete this circle. I have to complete the revenue, capital, receipts, expenditure. Let me complete this. Let me also complete the deficits. Then you have an idea. Then if I tell you what goes into CFI, what goes into public account, what goes into contingency, then the link is right. So based on that, I would request you to please hang on. Yes? Take your time. Okay. So the revenue side, the receipts, you have clarity. Now let's disaggregate, break up the capital side. The capital. You know, capital receipts. Here, basic classification is debt, non-debt. Yeah, Dharmendra ji, I think we have one or two. Take a look at the consolidated picture. Yeah. Revenue, expenditure. Anything else here? Because this is slightly jammed. Yes, here. Revenue, general concept of revenue. Next one, tax, non-tax, capital. Take a clear look at this. Tax, non-tax, non-debt, debt. This I have not covered. I'll discuss. Take a look at this. This, of course, is expenditure. You know, okay, grants and aid, revenue. See, I have taken a loan of 100. I have got a grant of 100. Grant is a revenue receipt, loan is a capital receipt. Grant I don't have to return, but grant is considered a revenue receipt. Capital is something, the loan is something which is called capital. Why is grant considered a revenue? That is the norm we are following. If somewhere else it is considered capital Well, let it be. But in India, grant is considered a revenue receipt, and when you give a grant to somebody, that's classified as a revenue expenditure. That is the budgeting norms that we follow. Dividends.
Sir,
Yeah.
could you please repeat the last,
Yes.
last sentence? Could you please repeat that?
What I said. See, please understand. I've got 100 rupees of grant. What is grant? Take this and do what you like. Do what you like. Take this, don't have to give it back to me. It's not a loan. Yeah? That is a grant. Anyone can give you a grant. Green Climate Fund, they can give you. You know, ozone fund, you can get something from there. Grant. So a grant is a revenue receipt. Similarly, I'm the government of India, you are the states, I give you grants. Bhutan, I give a bit of grant. Nepal, I'll give a little bit of grant. Maybe Bangladesh also, you know. The grant given, the grant taken, both of them are in the revenue account. Yes? Why means that is the norm we have chosen. You could keep it in the capital also because it is a lump sum money. It doesn't recur. You give me grant only once. What doesn't come twice and thrice and regularly over, you know, that will be revenue. Why is grant? But that's a budgetary norm that we follow. Yeah. Now I would like to talk of this. Having finished talking of this, we will have the same graphic again. Yeah. Yeah, in the meanwhile, you please go and, okay. So capital receipts are there. You have revenue, you have capital. Revenue we have seen. What's capital? Capital is on the union government. I gave some loan to states. It comes back. It's a capital receipt. The loans that are recovered are capital receipts, number one. Loan is a capital receipt. Whether you take it fresh or whether you recover it, it's a capital receipt. And see, disinvestment. Disinvestment. Recovery, recovered loan. This is a disinvestment. I want to explain this. Very simple. Disinvestment. See, this is a public sector company. Public sector enterprise or unit or undertaking, whatever the term you want to use, they all stand for the same. Government owns it. Government at one point owned 100. All the shares, 100 shares are there, all the 100 were Government of India. Government thought it's doing so wonderfully. If I sell about 10% of the shares, I'll get a decent amount of fiscal resource. I will use that for Jal Jeevan mission. I can use that for, you know, health infrastructure. Set up all India institutes of medical science, maybe. So the government's decision is, let us sell some shares of the public sector company to whoever wants to buy inside the country, outside the country, on the stock market, go and sell 10%. If you buy, it's investment. If you sell, it is disinvestment. As simple as that. Disinvestment and divestment are the same. You know, whenever you get a doubt, okay, today I'm here, tomorrow I'll be here, you know, till April, May, whatever, till September I'll be here. Whenever you get a doubt, you figure out with your common sense. 99% of the time you are right. 99 is good enough. So you see, so there's a public sector enterprise, all the shares are mine, some of the shares I would like to sell. so that I pick up some money, so that my Jal Jeevan mission can be carried out. That is called disinvestment. And an asset, what's capital receipt? Capital, that is asset. A share is an asset, a bond is an asset. I sold my share, picked up the money. That's a receipt of mine. And that is not a loan. See, I have a choice whether to borrow a rupee or to sell my share and get a rupee. So it's better than borrowing. If you borrow, then you are into loan and interest and all that. Let me check my luck on the disinvestment. There's market for that, etc. So disinvestment is a non-debt creating capital receipt. Obviously it's non-debt. How simple? This is revenue. This is revenue. This is capital. All of them get me X amount of money. How much? X. I need X plus. See, I'm the government of India or state government or what? My responsibilities are too many. There is never enough. Remember, on day one we talked about the scarcity as a given in multiple forms in the field of economics. So the government of India, the expectations of the people from government of India are too high. We want water, we want food, we want road, we want electricity, we want LPG, we want school, we want college. So the government has always more requirement for financial resources than what it actually has. Please go back to day one of our discussion wherein we nailed it down that scarcity guides economics. And scarcity being a fact with government finances also, government has to borrow so that public goods and other expectations are met. So this and this, put it together. Then you will get about 97 rupees or 96, 95. Your expenditure requirement is 100 for what you want to do, but you picked up only 97 or 96 or 95 or 93, depend. That is what you got, that is your earning, that is yours, but you require plus little more money. That money is what you borrow. Now you know how the question can come. Non-debt creating. This is debt, all this is non-debt. Except debt, all other receipts are non-debt. So, non-debt creating, watch the question carefully. Is he asking for non-debt creating budgetary receipt? Non-debt creating revenue receipt? Non-debt creating capital receipt? Pure labor, it doesn't require too much of thinking also. All that you have is what you are earning and you require a little more. That is what you are borrowing. Except borrowing, everything else is non-debt creating. Just that they collapse into two categories, revenue and, capital. So that's what I have to tell you, where you borrow from, etc. I'm coming there. Again, take a look. Whatever you have in your mind, you please ask. And when you talk of government finance, you talk of government finance, internal money, external money. Internal expenditure, external expenditure. Externally, you don't have any expenditure that you can talk of. So all the 100 you spend at home, out of the 100, maybe 99 you get it from home and 1 rupee external. So you please take your time. I'm pausing again because we are getting into the exam zone. If you are confident and therefore you are not asking me, I feel damn good. That is what I expect. Means that's the best condition to be in. I know, I can figure out, I got my basic raw material, the data, the concept, I can figure out. A wonderful state of being. But if you have a little bit here, a little bit there, you just need to be a little more confident. Most welcome. Yeah.
How is this investment a part of non-debt?
My share? It's my share. So how is it debt? If it's not debt, it is? It's so simple. Words are complicating. Reality is simple. Non-debt creating hoo-ha. Nothing. It's not debt. So it is non-debt. Take your time, consolidate. You know, this lesson and the next lesson, monetary policy, if we could cover that well and you could get your feet there, there's nothing to stop you. After that, it's all hard work. So, debt. Now, I don't want to go into debt in detail because let's complete the circle fast. Then we will plunge into debt. Internal, external, this, that. So, this is how you picked up. Dharmendra ji, anything? Capital. See? Recoveries. Disinvestment. Privatization means sell the company, hand it over to a private guy. That is privatization. See, this is my company, I told you. I sold a bit of few shares, 10 of them. Got the money and I'm still the majority owner and all that. But it's also possible that why should I own the company at all? I'm getting a good deal, so let's sell it off and that money is there. I will use it for, developing the country. So if you sell the company to a private partner, strategic partner, then that's privatization. How much you sell means majority. After that, completely. There is no timeline for that. There are no rules for that. Handing over a public sector company to a strategic partner in the private sector with the sale of bulk of the shares. Privatization. Sell the shares but don't hand over the management. That is disinvestment. All privatization is disinvestment. All disinvestment is not privatization. That is how it works. See here, disinvestment, privatization. And debt I have not gone into because it will take us about 45 minutes to 1 hour. This is not the time to go into that. This is the time to go into the expenditure side. So, Kala. Can I? Here? Yes. Okay. I want to erase this. Okay. This is the expenditure, 100. This is the non-debt. This is the debt. Both of them are receipts. This is the expenditure. This is 100. This is 90. This is 10. Non-debt, debt, and very clear. All that's not debt is non-debt. Now, this part will come after we have exhausted the budgetary process of explaining the expenditure, which is very interesting. Okay. Is this all for the time being? Wonderful. This is A class. But this is expenditure I have not discussed after discussion. So, you got your 100 rupees, how are you going to spend it? Once again, there is revenue, there is capital. Revenue and capital. So you spend on revenue. Revenue means again, you see, personal finance or public finance. Revenue is consumption. Revenue is maintenance. Revenue is recurrent. You had a coffee in the morning, you'll have it tomorrow. You'll have it the day after. You know, what recurs is revenue. And revenue is consumption. Nobody ever tells you, spend so much money on revenue. Revenue should be optimized, not capital should be, I'll come to that. So revenue expenditure is what? Consumption. Like I gave the example earlier, you know, take your own chai, tea. The tea cup that you bought, capital. The tea bag that you bought, revenue. This capital thing is going to be there if you can keep it, sentimental. I was in Rajendra Nagar with this cup of tea, I made it to the IAS. Your grandchildren also. Capital. But the tea bags that you exhausted on a daily basis, revenue. Milk, if you have milk, you know, or black tea, whatever, you know, that is all revenue. The stove that you have, the cylinder that you have, all revenue. What remains with you, investment, is capital. So what comes in the revenue expenditure? The first and foremost revenue expenditure would be salaries. They don't create any asset. Consumption, maintenance. You know, please understand. You may contradict me saying that, you are saying that salaries don't fetch any asset. You give me salary and I have created an asset, this. When I give salary, where is the asset? There is no asset. You worked and I gave you salary, that's all. There is no asset for me. Whereas, I built a road, asset. So in the revenue, number one is salaries. You know, salaries, allowances, pensions. Second one is interest. This is the biggest actually. Interest payments. Today one MCQ will be there for you, you know, because we have covered it. That will be a bit tough. There you will get some hierarchy as to how much is this, how much is that. Never mind, you won't if you don't get it right, you know, but that's to alert you. Interest payments. Third is subsidies. Subsidies also, please understand, you may buy a house with the subsidy that I gave, but for me it's a subsidy. So subsidies are invariably a revenue expenditure. I'm spending money for which there is no asset being created. That is the third one. Fourth one is, it requires discussion. Grants. See, grant is what? Grant is, you know, financial transfer on a non-returnable basis. So, you know, grant, at times you use the word grants in aid also. States are there, I'm the center, they have their own financial resources, they are in need of an extra rupee, I'll give grant. Grant in aid of their own revenues. Grant in aid and grant are the same, identical. So grants in aid, whatever. See, center, states, Panchayati Raj, Nagarapalika. What this union government does is, Union government is interested in uniform development. I don't want one state to develop, others to lag behind. I want all of them to develop. So what the government of India does is, it gives grants. Some grants Finance Commission tells the government of India to give. Some grants the government of India gives on its own. Both are grants. One way, they are not returnable. And those, some grants are okay, I'll give you a grant. I'll give you a grant for, some subsidy type. But when I give you, build a school and I'll give you a grant. Build a hospital, I'll give you a grant. Build a road, build a dam, build an irrigation project, I'll give you. So what are these examples? The grant that the government of India gives to the states and other similar bodies, similar means Panchayat Nagar Palika, with the help of which those bodies build capital assets. See, I am your states. I'm giving 100 rupees to you. For me, this 100 rupees is getting me nothing. You are building roads and dams with that. For you, it's capital. For me, it's revenue. It can't be capital for you and capital for me. That will go into double counting. So, there are grants given by the government of India to the states and other constitutional bodies. Those grants are used by them too. Some of it is used by them for capital creation. Why did I say? You will understand a little later. So these grants are both for capital as well as revenue purpose. Tomorrow a lovely preliminary question for you. One of the important sources of revenue expenditure for the government of India is the grants that it gives to the states. These grants are revenue, capital, both, neither. Obviously both. The money I give you, some money I say build a road. So revenue for me, capital for you. Some money I'm giving you a grant, you may use it for even for revenue purposes also. Revenue purposes also. So what am I basically saying here? In the revenue expenditure of the government of India, one important source is the grants it gives to the states. And those grants can be revenue or capital. Why am I insisting on spelling out this? You will understand when I talk of deficits. So this is the revenue expenditure. Salaries, interest payments, subsidies, grants. Salaries means defense also. What is so sacred about defense? Defense also. This is the revenue expenditure. Capital expenditure is only two types. Give loan, build a road. When I say a road, I mean infrastructure, capital formation, capital asset creation. Give a loan, capital expenditure. Spend 10 rupees on road, capital expenditure. So all your capital expenditure collapses into two categories. One, giving a loan. Two, creation of infrastructure, capital asset. So this is how you spend all the money that you picked up via revenue and capital receipts. Identically, revenue and capital expenditure columns are also there. And in the revenue column, this is what you get. And in the expenditure column, this is what you get. Take your time. Again, you take your time.
Sir,
Yeah.
so how is grant different from subsidies?
Grant and subsidy. Subsidy is you buy LPG cylinder and whatever the price, I will pick up some of it as subsidy. It's in the market 500 rupees and I'll make it 300 rupees, 200 I'll chip in. I'm subsidizing the LPG cylinder to make it affordable. Grant is take this money and build a road. To build a road, I'm giving you a grant. Or you are falling short of, you have a revenue problem. You are a state that does not have revenue buoyancy. You require me to fill the gap. You are not able to give salaries. I'll give you. So grant is something non-returnable, and grant is something meant for a purpose. It's not meant to make anything affordable. Subsidy is to make goods and services financially affordable to the consumer. That is subsidy. Grant is a one-way financial transfer for any purpose, revenue or capital. I gave you the examples also. You're okay now?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Sir, defense or expenditure comes under revenue or capital?
Defense. You know, I told you, see, you are working in civilian bureaucracy. He is working in defense bureaucracy. What is the difference? You are a police officer, he is an army man. What is the difference? The role may be different. A salary is a salary is a salary. We don't distinguish between anyone here. All salaries are salaries, pensions are pensions, allowances are allowances. The concept is that.
Purchasing military aircraft.
Yeah,
Purchasing military aircraft.
that is a capital expenditure. When you buy a drone, America, a tank, or aircraft carrier, whatever, when you buy capital, you are acquiring an asset. So investment in capital. So receipts, expenditure, revenue expenditure is revenue like everywhere else. And buying a Rafale is buying a Rafale, that's capital. So broadly that is the classification, capital, revenue. Yeah.
Sir,
Yes?
can you please repeat the point that there are only two types of capital?
One is, see, Government of India told the states, I want you to build infrastructure. I'm ready to give you a loan, interest-free loan, 50-year interest-free loan, provided you use that for capital creation, capital formation. So I'll give them loan, capital expenditure. I'll myself build a road, capital expenditure. I don't see a third, type of capital expenditure. Give a loan, capital expenditure. Create asset by spending it on your own, capital expenditure. That's all. Take your time. Yes?
Explain the concept of asset.
Explain what?
Concept of asset.
Asset. Asset or capital. Asset, capital, investment. It is something that gives returns. It is not consumed. For example, a road. Road is an asset. Dam is an asset. Factory is an asset. Any equipment that you invest in is an asset. Why do you do it? It fetches you return. Yeah? Or it helps you produce goods and services. There is a building, somebody is occupying, consumption, and somebody uses it as an office, it's an asset. Because that office is creating returns for you, isn't it? So asset or capital, a share, say I have 10 rupees. I can go to a hotel, blow it up. Somebody told me, you buy a Reliance share for 100, it gets you a little bit of money every year. So what do? Go to a hotel, blow it up, consumption. Buy a Reliance share. It's a financial asset. Somebody tells me, no, Government of India is floating infrastructure bonds, buy that, it will get you 8% annual interest. Financial asset. Somebody tells you, no, buy a gold bond, that fetches you ABCD. Financial asset. And somebody, so asset is something that gets you returns or it is used for the production of goods and services. Financial and physical assets. You find? Our friend?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So, revenue side of the expenditure, we have clarity. Capital also we have clarity. But this part we have not seen. So you're getting 97 or something, you're spending 100 for which you have to borrow 3 rupees. Where do you borrow and how much do you borrow, FRBM, all that, we are getting into it. To understand all that, we require to understand deficits. Half an hour left still?
10 minutes.
10 minutes. Oh, Palestinians have taken away our time. Deficits. One, fiscal deficit. Revenue deficit. Effective revenue deficit. Effective revenue deficit. Primary deficit. And finally, you don't have, but concept is there. Monetized deficit. So, these are the 5 deficits, we will understand them, they are all very clear. It requires a little bit of mimicking the economist, public finance person. See, you are earning 97, you are spending 100, the gap is 3, that's all the gap, only 3 rupee gap is there. So, in a given budget, the difference between expenditure and non-debt creating receipts is equal to debt. The debt is equal to fiscal deficit. So in simple terms, if I have to tell you, you can complicate it if the examiner wants it. In simple terms, the loan that you are taking in order to fill the gap between what you are earning and what you are spending is debt. The debt is equal to fiscal deficit. So fiscal deficit is the deficit between expenditure of the government and the non-debt creating financial receipts, which means fiscal deficit is equal to debt. That is, the total amount of loan that the government of India takes or state government takes in a given year, given period is fiscal deficit. Total. Not 1 paisa is outside it. All the loan that you have taken in a given year, you are the government, fiscal deficit is equal to that. That's all. That's all. That is a gross fiscal deficit. There is a net fiscal deficit also. Let's not get into that. We'll get into that later. Now,
Sir,
yeah.
can you please explain fiscal deficit again?
Please repeat.
Can you please explain fiscal deficit?
Yeah, it's very simple. See, this is your expenditure. This is your earnings, or you may call it your income. And this is 97. This is 100. So you have to borrow 3. This is the fiscal deficit. What is the deficit here? 3. Rest all is your earning. Non-debt creating financial receipts, both on the revenue and the capital account. 3 is the gap, which is the fiscal deficit. Is there a paisa more than 3 that you can see here? No. 97 you are earning, 100 you are spending, 3 is the deficit, and that is the fiscal deficit because That is all that you need to borrow for you to spend 100. So the borrowing in the budget, totality of the borrowing, equals fiscal deficit. Because this is the fiscal system, receipts and expenditure. In that there is a deficit. And that deficit is equal to the total loan that you make. Isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. See, I will use separate colors also if you like. Earnings. The blue thing is the fiscal deficit. This is your expenditure. These are your earnings, capital and revenue, both the accounts. And this is the gap, and that is the fiscal deficit. Fiscal deficit is equal to the entirety of the loan that the government takes in a given period or whatever. This is the gross fiscal deficit. You want me to talk of the net fiscal deficit? That's very simple. See, so I've borrowed 3 rupees, gross fiscal deficit. In that, 1 rupee I have borrowed to pass it on to you. It's not my borrowing. I borrowed for you. So remove that 1 rupee. I don't want it. I borrowed for you. So remove that 1 rupee. How much is it? 2 rupees. Yeah. And I gave you money previous years and you gave me half a rupee return. So 2 plus half a rupee, 2.5 rupees the net. In other words, I borrowed 3. Only 2 for myself, 1 for you. So why would I like to be burdened with what I borrow for you as my fiscal deficit? So 3 minus 1 is 2. But then earlier you took loans and some of the loans you repaid me 50 paisa. So 3. Net fiscal deficit, gross fiscal deficit. I'm sure you got it, isn't it? What I borrow for the states is deducted, and what is added is the recovered loan from the states. Recovered how? I gave you loans and some of that have come back. So this is the math. Nobody is going to ask you about the net fiscal deficit, but this is the math if you are interested. From gross to net is what I borrow for you, what I've come back and all that. If you have any question on that, I can answer, but don't take it so seriously. Get the concept clear. So fiscal deficit, Shall we shut down for today? Okay. So we'll close down for today. I hope nothing serious will happen in the next 24 hours. Because it is very, very bloody. Yeah.
Good question. You said the difference between the revenue receipts and the non-debt expenditure.
Ask me tomorrow. Thank you.